if you had to pick a character from the movie or book, why did you pick Luthien Tinuviel?
Oh boy. Yeah, well, first of all, I love the Silmarillion and I love
Hmm.
Tolkien's world. So I wanted to pick a character from that world. And I've always loved Luthien. I mean, when we first meet her, she's dancing in a woods, singing to herself, and she just seems really
Yeah.
happy. And so I instantly really liked that character. So that is, I read it. I don't even remember when the first time I read the Silmarillion was. And maybe it's like 12, maybe 15, I don't know. But so yeah, just felt like a kinship there. And of course, she goes on all these amazing adventures and she's got long dark hair, and just like I had at the time, like very long hair. So I don't know. I think I just I liked the magic of that character.
Hmm.
Um, she's her story's a little tragic, but it's just so beautiful too. So
Agreed.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, what a an amazing choice. Like kind of a Joan of Arc, but with a whole lot more, I don't know, magic involved and so on.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody. Today we're joined by Jacqueline Lucca. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Jacqueline Lucca.
Lucca. Okay, she is an author and adventurer with a passion for words and stories, and this is the conversation first to meet her as an author, and she's got a new book that she is in the process of publishing, and we're actually really excited to be able to chat about it first. So you heard it here first, this new book that she's been working on. So welcome, Jacqueline. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
For those who are not seen this show before, this is the Catholic Author Show. It's a show about fiction for modern Catholic authors. We're talking creed, craft, and co-creation, rooted in grit, grace, gods, and dragons. I'm your host, Dominic, novel lover, all-around creative, founder of Catholic Author. We're here to inspire your faith and your fiction. So, what is your origin story, Jacqueline? How did you become a writer of a novel?
Oh, good question. So I've always been a storyteller.
Hmm.
I've always loved creating worlds, creating characters, and they always would feel very real to me.
Hmm.
They were very much friends and yeah, characters who just felt like they were real. Um, but I think I didn't really start writing and sharing stories till probably a couple of years ago. I met a friend who was also a Catholic writer, and we started talking, and I started sharing my story with her. She would share her story with me, and I've been trying to get a lot better with actually sharing those stories because I think when we're given stories like that, when we have these worlds and these characters, it's so beautiful to be able to share those and invite people into those worlds and invite people to get to know those characters so that they can find someone who's hopefully relatable or things like that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It can be hard to actually share that stuff, and
absolutely.
especially when you're not used to it, when it's something that's so private. So I'm curious, what were some of the early stories that you created?
Oh my goodness. I'll have to try to think back. I would do lots of fairy tales.
Mhm.
So lots of yeah, fairies running around. I'm trying to think. Lots of castles, knights fighting,
Nice.
intrigue, things like that.
Hmm.
A lot of these stories actually, I think they're gonna keep coming up and maybe revamped ways in my novels.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there'll probably be a lot of those characters coming up in novels and short stories. But lots of I like the princesses, knights, and magic and those kinds of
Yeah.
things. So.
Well, given the nature of the show being it's not just about writing, I'm curious, what's some of your faith background, and how do you feel that informs you as a writer?
That's a beautiful question. Yeah, so I've was born, raised Catholic my whole life. So, and it's something that I have found to be incredibly beautiful. So I think it informs every aspect of my life. I went to school at the University of St. Thomas, and I got a double major in English and Catholic studies, and I
Wow.
loved learning more about the faith.
Hmm.
And I think Catholicism has such a rich and beautiful I don't even know how to say it, history, legacy. We have the arts we've supported. We've there's so much music and paintings and writing because of the Catholic Church that I feel like that has given me such a beautiful tradition, I guess, to enter into when I'm writing, and I think that
Mhm.
that's really yeah, really beautiful to tap into, and I definitely think it informs my writing. Not explicitly, maybe I don't have Catholic religion in my fantasy novels,
Mhm.
but I think it impacts the morals that the characters have, and their what they value as important in life.
Mhm.
So I think it informs a lot of the implicit values of this of
Mhm.
these characters. So.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about that, the Sands of Nall, and what's the without giving away the ending, obviously, what's the story about? Yeah, what's the blurb for this story?
Sure. Yeah, it's a story about a desert kingdom in the desert Nall, and this kingdom is beginning the physical kingdom is beginning to collapse, and there is the king's chief advisor thinks that if he can find a certain ancient treasure, he'll be able to undo this curse that's making the city fall apart. And he thinks that the person who can help him find this treasure is the lost Princess Nariel. And so the story is kind of told both from his perspective of trying to find this treasure and
Mhm.
this Princess Nariel, who has grown up outside of the city walls, not a princess at all. But just, yeah, that's their journey to try to work together. And they're from very different cultures, but they try to work together to create or to find a way to save the city that they both love. So.
Nice. What's the target audience? Who's it written for?
So I think it's gonna be a YA fantasy, fit in that genre. The more I write it, I feel like it's gonna be on the older end of that. So I'm, not, um, I think it's still gonna be YA, but it is kind of on the older end. So
Cool.
yeah.
Very cool. Um, I'm curious to ask, and you probably don't have to answer this, but what is there a special reason why she is raised outside the city walls, like Princess in Exile or something?
Yeah, so her I'm trying to think if this is going to give anything away because when the story starts, you don't know why this princess is outside of the walls and what are the political
Okay.
dynamics.
So that's part of the mystery there.
But yeah, I think you find out pretty early on though that her mom was exiled because of some stuff that she did. So there's a lot of tension between Nariel and then the people who live in the city because of that, because her mother had a really terrible experience.
Mhm.
And so there's some family background and there's some politics involved.
Okay.
But yeah, she's kind of grown up outside of the city then and
Nice.
still remembers all of, she still knows she's a princess, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that are different about her because of that.
Yeah. What's the overall feeling of the book? Like, is it similar to a movie or some other books that are out there?
Oh, one of my friends was just reading a book, City of Brass, and she said that it reminded her a lot of that. I haven't read it, so I
Okay.
can't say for sure if that's, if that's something I would say. But I think I would describe it as, um, let's see, it's fantasy, but it's very, um, I want to say visceral. I don't know if that's right, but a lot of people comment on how vivid it is, like how
Yes.
it kind of sucks you in. So it's kind of more magical but very brightly colored, would maybe be a
Hmm.
good way to say it, where um
Interesting.
yeah, there's the desert and there's
So I'm hearing
it's
like Prince of Persia with Lightbringer or Shadow and Bone.
oh yes. Yes. Actually, Prince of Persia is very, yeah, that's a very, very good description of it. Yeah. Very adventure, bright and magic filled. Yeah.
That is fun. I love that stuff. Funnily enough, there's a novel I'm very slowly procrastinating on, and all of a sudden realized in rewriting it, oh yes, it is actually set in the desert too. So I'll
Oh,
I'm looking
wonderful.
forward to checking out your novel for inspiration. So okay, let's talk about the origin of the story. What is it that kicked it off, and that how long have you been writing it? What was the
Mhm.
inspiration for it? Let's dig into some of the origins of the story.
Yeah. The story origin really is a dream I had when I was really little. There was this moment of the dream where I was running along a castle wall or some kind of palace wall, and the wall was collapsing behind me as I was running. And it was just an incredibly vivid moment in the dream where it was, I think it was a little scary, but just really tragic. And it was such a beautiful place that I was. I don't remember being that scared, but just it was really sad. So I had this really vivid moment. And then another part in the dream, I, suddenly was in this completely different spot, deep in a jungle or a forest, and it was very beautiful. But there was a sense of loss because the tower behind me had been collapsing.
Hmm.
So, anyways, that was basically the two scenes that kickstarted the novel, and from there, I
Wow.
just would, kind of dig into those scenes a little bit more. What happened before?
Hmm.
Why was the city collapsing? What happened after? What were they going to do about it? And so that's really how it started. It was just a dream, and I love writing down dreams when I get really vivid moments like this because
Yes.
yeah, it's just beautiful how they can kind of expand into a full world in a novel and
It's
yeah,
true.
keep going from there.
Do you
Yeah.
do dream journaling?
I don't. I've been told I should try to do that, but usually I'll just do it if I get hit with a really powerful dream that I
Clear,
feel
yeah.
like I have to save, then I'll sit down and do it. But I don't do it every day or
Oh,
um
sure, sure.
have a specific journal or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've got a little app that I like to use, and sometimes if a dream is that vivid, I'll pull it up and jot it down. And it's strange and it's intriguing to go back and reread them. Um, Sometimes, yes, you
Mm,
can get cool ideas, from them. But I remember reading once, I think I was reading something about Carl Jung or dream psychology, stuff like that, and they would talk about
mm,
pay attention to all the details, like which direction are you walking, which direction did you turn
mm,
in, and because everything in a dream is, in a way, it's you trying to parse and understand something you're going through and your ideas about things in your environment or in your own personality. Um, when you sit and actually reflect on that, because half the time dreams are something you're trying to tell yourself. Now that your conscious mind is
mm,
out of the way, your subconscious mind, is doing
mm,
some sort of processing. So you can, anyhow, it can be fantastic food for thought
mhm,
in there. And actually, what's intriguing about that is when I crafted the How to Be a Catholic Author course, unintentionally, that was kind of part of it. This sense that this is what we authors are doing. It's kind of like a dream space. It's kind of like subconscious space. We're playing around in creativity, which is an area that's kind of above and below ordinary waking day consciousness. Like above, and that it
mm.
involves, the angels and holiness and the numinous and kind of its impression on us. And then there's all the stuff that we don't ever want to think about or deal with, and so on. And then so we create stories out of that stuff, and that just intrigues me.
Oh, that's fascinating. What app do you use then for dream things?
I'm not actually. I mean, you could just use a text file if you wanted, but I use a little um, thing. It's called Lucid Dream Journal. It's like a very purple looking little app. So, and then it's kind of funny because you can then every day it says, "So how did you feel? How did you sleep?" And you give a little emoji and stuff. And then over time it gives you like, "Oh, you had bad sleep, good sleep, bad sleep." I don't know. Maybe you can just sort of track what kind of dreams you're having depending on how you're feeling or something. I've never paid attention that much to it,
Mm.
but anyhow, just reminds me of. Have you read the story Elantris by Brandon Sanderson?
No.
No? Okay, it just when your description of that dream reminded me of that novel. It's an amazing. I love Brandon Sanderson as an author. Anyhow, that's beside.
He's-
So, let's go back to Sands of Nall, and so it emerged out of a dream. How long then have you been working on it, and what is it like creating the characters? Um, and you described the dream having a very specific feeling, and do you feel like you captured that in your book?
Oh, those are really good questions. Um, I think so. I hope so. I hope I've captured it.
Okay.
I think so. Judging from beta reader response, um, so far a lot of the responses have been exactly what I'm going for. So that's that's a
Awesome.
plus, right? As an author, you're always hoping that you get this response to people. Um, let's see, how long have I been working on this? I think I've been working on it for about um I had the dream probably like 14 years ago. So
Mhm.
a while that I've been working on the actual world. I've been working on actually writing it out in a format where other people can have it as a
Mhm.
novel, probably for about 2 years now. So a
Okay.
long time and trying to figure out the writing process.
Yeah.
It's a novel is such a huge thing. It's a totally different journey than writing a short story or an essay. So I'm trying to learn what's
Mhm.
the best method of doing this. Um,
So what has worked for you? Uh, What is your writing process?
Yeah, good question. I think one of the biggest things that I've had to learn is telling myself the story and being okay with not having it perfect at first.
Okay.
I think it's easy to get paralyzed when you have, what is it, 80,000 worth of words that you want to tell people, and you have no idea how to arrange this or how do we even start a project this big. And I think the best piece of advice I heard was tell yourself the story first, and then you can arrange it the best, better ways. And that has helped a lot. So going through and just what do I need to see right now in this moment? What
Hmm.
do I want to see from these characters? And being okay with just telling myself each piece of the story as it kind of unfolds has been really good.
Hmm.
And then after that, I'll kind of do a polishing look. I'll send it out to beta readers and ask, was there something that was confusing? And I will get comments like, I think you should move this chapter from, here to over here. This one
Hmm.
needs to be number one because it was confusing. So then it's helpful. But for myself, I think the process that's worked is trying to be, basically writing the story that I want to read. And so
Hmm.
just telling myself writing down on the page what I see really clearly, what I'm interested in looking at, because there's an infinite amount of details that you could put into a book where you could turn your head any which way and you could tell what's on the wall currently, what does the carpet feel like, and you have to
Yeah.
figure out like what do you want to look at. And that's probably what the reader is going to want as well. Every so often, of course, they're going to say, oh, I really wish I didn't have a sense of space or things like that. But it's, I think, just telling this, like, what do I want to see next, what am I really curious about, and then putting that down has helped me a lot, because I think, if you want to see it and you're
Hmm.
interested in it, that's probably going to be interesting for the reader as well. So that's been
Hmm.
my process so far.
That's intriguing. I know that you've got courses on your website, and so that's courses in writing and editing as well. Yes.
Mhm. Yes.
And let's talk about that just for a second and then come back. So tell us about your courses.
All right. So the courses, it's Adventures in Excellence. The website is, it started a couple years ago, actually when COVID shut everything down, and I realized a lot of people were kind of involuntarily homeschooling.
Hmm.
And I've always loved writing. I've worked as a tutor slash teacher for, I don't know, 10 years now. So I've had some experience, and I decided I really wanted to kind of start my own courses. So a
Hmm.
lot of them are going to be composition courses, which
Hmm.
are based on the Institute for Excellence in Writing, IW classes, which that's kind of a big um, curriculum creator in the homeschooling world. So a lot of them are
Hmm.
based off of that. And they're classical, there's a kind of a classical education pedagogy there, which I
Okay.
think is really cool. I think the writing, the academic writing that comes out from those kinds of courses are often really, um, really good, not just in terms of organization, but stylistically, students really learn how to speak eloquently. And because of that, they are kind of pushed to expand their vocabulary and their critical thought. So
Hmm.
that's the main set of courses I have are composition courses. I also create literature courses. And then I've just started doing some creative writing as well, which
Hmm.
has been really, really fun. It's very, very exciting
Hmm.
to see students come in, with an idea and then leave with a pretty solid draft of a novel. My goal
Nice.
someday is to have a shelf on my wall with my books and then another shelf with all of my students' books, because that would just be incredible. So it's very exciting to see, yeah, other people's worlds that they have kind of locked in their heads start to
Hmm.
get on the page and expand. And I love exploring it. I don't feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm privileged to
Totally.
read a lot of books. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I was always everything you just said. That's completely describing me. Growing up, I'm from a family of like 8 kids, and four of us were like into writing stories and stuff, and two of us took it really seriously. And I just couldn't get enough of that. I love that, and that's actually a huge reason why I started Catholic Author and then Legend Fiction, whoops, as kind of a publishing place, for that is because we just want to have fun when it comes to creative writing and stories and
Yeah.
discovering worlds together and sharing. So with all of the work that you've then put into the courses and your education and so on, how do you feel that impacted your writing of the novel? Do you feel it kind of went
Mm.
more easily than you expected, or did you kind of trip up over yourself, or did you have to unlearn things? How did that impact you?
Yeah, it's cool because it has really impacted my writing a lot. Um, I think I think I never want to stop teaching because when you're telling other people to do stuff, you can't ignore that advice yourself. So I think there's been a lot of times where my students will hit a problem and I'll give them advice, like there's no such thing as writer's block. Here's how you get over this. And I'll give them that advice. So when I'm feeling like a little lull in my writing, I'll
Mhm.
have that, that all of the advice I gave them, I'll have for myself. And I think that there's an enthusiasm and a creativity among students as well that's really beautiful and really inspiring. So I think it's helped a tremendous amount. Teaching writing is constantly making me want to hone my own craft so I can be better at teaching them how to hone their craft. And
Mhm.
so it's constantly challenging me to step up and like be a little bit better of a writer, be a little bit better of an editor. I'm grading their papers. It's helping me also get in the zone of polishing my own work. So it's this
Mhm.
I think it really challenges me to continue to be a better writer in so many ways and like be enthusiastic, be, grammatically a little sharper, be excited to explore new corners of the world, be dedicated to the craft. So yeah, all of those things have really helped a lot for sure.
Awesome. What's been the number one piece of advice? Maybe as you then shut all the doors, switch on your music, get in the zone, and then as you're writing, one piece of advice keeps coming back to you that helps you turn out good writing.
Oh, one piece of advice. I think um, I think this is one. I love the advice, be true to the story, or like be honest. Because
Mhm.
I think sometimes there's a story that we have that we should be telling.
Mhm.
But then sometimes I've seen students kind of shy away, or friends even who are writing books kind of shy away from a scene because they feel like they're already thinking about their readers and they feel like it's not going to be well received. Like, oh, my readers are going to hate this character though. So I'm going to
Right.
try to make him a little less cowardly than this character actually is, or I'm going to try to describe this setting to be a little bit nicer or something like that. And I
Mhm.
think what happens when we really just let it be what it is, like let the story be what it is there's like a sense of authenticity about it, and
Mhm.
um, even in fantasy, there's a sense of a real place or a real character.
Mhm.
So I think just trying to be real to what the character, what the character actually is, or what the setting actually
Mhm.
is really important. And then, let's say if down the road agents feel like this character isn't very likable and they want you to change it, that's fine. But I think it's really important to just put what you're actually seeing in your head, whether, that's
Mhm.
your dream or that's your character that you really want to have on the page. I think being honest,
Mhm.
and it sounds kind of funny
Yeah.
because, of course, you're making it up, but I feel like oftentimes there's a character that you can see, or,
Mhm.
there's a story that people have that they want to tell. And I think just being honest to that or being
Yeah.
true to that kind of is really important.
Yeah. Two examples jump to mind for me. One is a personal one, and then one is a story I was just rereading for a friend earlier this week. One was I invented a little character when I was a kid, and he started out in a coloring book, and he was kind of heroic, and he was, his little Robin Hood mouse, basically a little mouse that could shoot bows and arrows and stuff, and he's rescuing the world from bad rats, whatever. And
Cute.
yeah, he's totally coming back as like a totally grown up YA novel. But anyhow, when I started trying to turn it into a novel at about 21 or 22, I started trying to get into his head and all of a sudden realized, oh my gosh, he is an angry little mouse. This is not what I
Mm,
expected at all. He's supposed to be
mm.
like, you know, um, Errol Flynn, upbeat and, cavalier. And then I tried to get into his heart and tell the story from the inside out. It's like, whoa, I did not expect this character. And ended up walking away from it for like a decade before I realized one of the ways to handle it was to split that character into three characters. And then all of a sudden I understood him. But that sense of be honest with your character and then see where that goes. And I like
Yes.
the point you made about, that authenticity because um, sometimes I think the audience we think we're writing for isn't exactly that, right? And
Yeah.
this dovetails to the second story I was going to mention. I'll turn it back over to you. But this one person was writing a story about a kind of a holy character, a known saint in a terrible uh, execution like situation. And he did a great job in describing how horrible the situation was. But the character ended up being very um, sort of holy card, flat, perfect answers.
Mm,
No real, like all of the attention given into how horrible the world was, none of that went into the actual character's response to that. Maybe because the person feels, oh, I can't be that real or that authentic. There are, I mean, we know now there are saints, so they shouldn't have things like, I don't know, doubts and fears on the way to the scaffold or something like that. And I'm pushed back and said, no, 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 that's not your job to tell, you know, if you want to tell that kind of story, then fine, do it. But I don't think that's what you're telling. You really are need to pull us into the inner life and the inner journey, the
mm,
animal fear of the body goes through as a person's going into that. And we can't see that from the outside. But that's what stories are supposed to give to us, you know. So maybe the audience you think you're writing for isn't actually that. Maybe you're writing for a different audience, an older one, a more mature one. If that's the case, I think own it. Um, and it's that's why movies get PG ratings or R ratings. You know, just pick your rating and then see where that goes. What do you think?
mm. Absolutely. I love the example of a saint too, because I think sometimes we try to pretend that saints weren't human. And I think that just makes them less accessible. And I think telling their story honestly can help people who are trying to strive for sainthood as well. And I think
Mhm.
that is something that I would love to see more. I know I know the writer Meg Hunter Kilmer has
Mhm.
been doing a lot of trying to tell saint stories honestly, and you know talking about they had
Yeah.
struggles too. So yes, I agree so much. I think diving into the characters, whether they're your little the mouse or they're a saint, either way, it's just so good to be real because that's what the people are actually gonna that's what readers really want. I mean, that's what I
Mhm.
want. I want a character who's real and who's interesting, and maybe I can relate to that character, or maybe they help me see another side of humanity. I don't want this
Yeah.
whitewashed perfect or stock character that you
Mhm.
thought I wanted, so something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that.
I'm curious about your take on, writing for your audience, and then perhaps you get into a story, and this is, I don't know, maybe this is going darker than you thought it was, and I'm not sure if I want to go this place. And what would you say to someone about the idea of maybe taking a step back and owning their audience or understanding who they're writing for or what it is they're actually writing? Like, how have you responded to that?
I'm trying to see who your audience is. um I'm trying to think, like, in terms of like how do you pick your audience, or how do you understand? I guess I'm not sure. How do you understand your audience
Well,
better? Is
yeah,
that
like, I don't know, maybe starting, kind of with your story is a good starting point. Like, obviously, I think when we start things, we start writing for ourselves, and then a point comes where we realize there's partly an obligation to the audience that we're writing for, but there's also an obligation to the original vision that we had for the thing. I'm very
Mhm.
much in line with, or I agree so far with Flannery O'Connor when she's like, "You're creating a piece of art, and there is a corresponding responsibility from the person observing the art to elevate themselves to understand it." Not everybody will. It's not for everybody. It's like my dad would
Mhm.
always say, you don't read the Song of Songs to a classroom of 13-year-olds. Not an appropriate audience. Or Hamlet to a room of manic depressives. It's like not the right
Mm,
audience. So I think it does give you a good sense of objectivity about what to keep and how to edit when you can get a clear sense
mhm,
of who you want and don't want reading the story. So I'm curious if that's come
mhm.
up for you with your own story or in your advice to others.
Oh, that is a good question. I feel like um I think oftentimes when I'm giving advice to other people for their, my students for their stories, I'm seeing a lot of um they're often writing for their own age group.
Mhm.
So we have this community of writers then where they're getting feedback from their peers that are the age that kind of are the audience they're writing for. So that's actually incredibly helpful because the audience isn't necessarily an abstract kind of
Mhm.
group of, oh, you're going to have a YA novel. And so try to think of a YA audience. But when you have actual people who are in this age group, and they're all working on, giving you critiques on it, and you can see their reactions every time you read a short clip, and you can hear
Mhm.
what they want to hear more of. That's been incredibly helpful. So um, I guess I don't think about audience. I don't always think of it as abstractly, but I kind of think
Mhm.
about, oh, what will my friend so and so think of this piece? I try to think of an audience that or people that are maybe fitting in the audience,
Mhm.
um, people that kind of fit in the audience demographic at least, and then think about how they might enjoy the story better, or what would help make it clear or be appropriate to put in for that specific audience level. So I kind of, um, yeah, I guess I think of them, pick a couple people that I feel like fit the demographic, and then think what would they like, and then
Mhm.
hopefully that also is going to help help it be appropriate for the wider demographic as
Yeah.
well. So yeah.
No, good point. I want to keeping it moving, and I'm just curious to ask you, apart from the Silmarillion, do you have any favorite legends or stories growing up that uh, you love a lot? You like to come back to? Maybe it's a myth or a legend.
Yes. I mean, it's hard to say one, but I think one that has been kind of consistently fascinating to me has been East of the Sun, West of the Moon. Like,
Oh, is that George MacDonald?
oh, there is. I've read, there's a really old, or no, is that the back of the North Wind? That might be on the back of the North Wind.
Okay,
But it's like an old Norwegian, I think it's like a Norwegian fairy tale, I think.
okay, okay,
I'm not sure, but it's very similar to, or it kind of feels like a Norwegian take on Cupid and Cupid and Psyche, kind of like the
okay.
Greek myth.
Mhm.
Um, but it's kind of like yeah, almost like a Beauty and the Beast. I feel like there's a very similar strain that runs through a lot of cultures. But so I'm not sure. Maybe George MacDonald had a very, took a, had a spin on it.
Uh-huh.
That might have been that. But I like also Till We Have Faces, which is kind of
Okay,
C.S.
yes.
Lewis's,
Mhm.
his retelling of Cupid and Psyche.
Mhm.
So yeah, East of the Sun, West of the Moon is just a very beautiful. It's a kid story,
Mhm.
but there's I guess this theme of like longing for the beloved and like journeying after them and hoping to find them, which I think it's a very beautiful story. It's
Mhm.
very Beauty and the Beast, where she goes off and then she realizes the beast may be dying, and she's trying to
Yeah.
hope he's okay. Or in this story, the girl her lover's taken away, and she has to go find him, and she has to go east of the sun, west of the moon, which is an impossible distance, really, but she's determined to try. And I think yeah, it's a very beautiful story, and it kind of captures this longing in the human heart, I think, to want to find love, but really to want to find God. So I think
Mhm.
it's very sweet and it's cute, but it's also so, I think it has so much depth to it as well. So
Yeah. No, that's
that's probably my
beautiful.
favorite.
It's been a long time since I've read that. Now that you're mentioning that, the one of the things I so love about myths and fairy tales is um, how they are so rich with psychological and spiritual truths, and they're narratives that are meant to be read as children, but then they're meant to be understood and integrated as adults. And what you just said right there, I never realized it till you pointed out. East of the sun, west of the moon effectively means staying completely in place and not moving. It's like discovering a position of complete centeredness and inner, awareness, spiritual awakening, that kind of thing. I'd never realized that. And we dramatize this or externalize this as a long journey because that's what it can feel like sometimes when you're trying
Mm.
to understand yourself. But I never realized that actually means being completely in place, because to go completely east of the sun and west of the moon doesn't allow you to go anywhere.
That's so cool. I love that. Yes.
Oh,
It's
that's
an internal
fun.
journey as well as
Yeah, no,
yeah.
exactly. Oh my goodness. There's a post that I wrote, and you've written these kinds of posts, which is why it's so cool to chat with you. But one of the seminal posts that went out with the Catholic Author blog as it relaunched was this idea of the rewilding of enchantment.
Mm.
There'd been a book that was written by Bruno Bettelheim called The Uses of Enchantment, and how I think he was a Freudian, Jungian, I think he was a psychoanalyst, but he used fairy tales to help traumatized children reintegrate themselves. And he would read them through these stories. And if they would cotton onto a particular story, he'd go back without judgment or observation or, or explaining anything. Just read that story to the child over and over and over again until they worked through some internal process, and then he turned it all into this great big book. And it's just, I didn't know what I was reading when I first read it 15 years ago. And then I've come back to it since and reread my notes and stuff and realized this is amazing. But more importantly, I don't like the title, The Uses of Enchantment. No, no, no. I think we need to rewild it. And it's not always, Aslan is not a tame lion, right? And
Yeah.
enchantment is a numinous thing. So allowing it to go back to being this kind of wild, sacred, spiritual, like an enzyme that catalyzes us, that moves us to do things. And I think fairy tales, myths, and sacred tales, sacred stories, they do that. They're these ferments inside us that get us to think differently, to engage differently with the world, to allow angels to breathe through us. Mary and the saints to be active in us, as long as we're open to enchantment, because the world is always enchanted. It's we who disenchant,
Mhm.
unmagic ourselves, whatever. So anyhow, that was, yeah, fairy tales and,
Yes.
and myths are just wonderful things.
Ah, I love that. Yes. Yes. I didn't know about that book, how fairy tales can help traumatized children, but it sounds so fascinating because I think it's so true. So
Mhm.
true. It helps.
I'm curious to ask you about in creating your world, the Sands of
Mhm.
Nall. Let's talk about world building. How much time do you spend on it? Do you have like Google Docs and text files with loads of notes? Do you sometimes get lost in it, or are you more neatly structured and you quite more easily progress through things? What's your process on that front?
Ooh, this is a good question. I think with Sands of Nall, it's such an old world for me in some ways.
Mm,
Um, I feel like it's kind of changed depending on where I'm at with it. But
mhm.
I know when I was little, I'd always get these travel magazines and I'd cut out pictures
Oh, cool.
that felt like it might be a piece of thing. So I remember there was one room I cut out, like I don't know if it was a hotel room or what, but
Mm,
it was, yeah, it was beautiful. And I was like, this is totally where the princess stays when she does come into the city. Like
uh-huh.
it was what it was. And so, I've gone that route of kind of just seeing what inspires me. With world building, music, I feel like helps me really build a world.
Mhm.
I've listened to the Interstellar soundtrack so many times while writing The Sands of Nall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That
so
is cool.
right, yeah, Hans Zimmer's great.
Do you have Pinterest? Yeah, he is. Do you have Pinterest boards that you make for your books?
So I've pinned a lot of pins that I want to kind of explore at some point, and I think a story
Mm,
could be built off of them. I haven't
okay.
actually done any mood boards for specifically for
Mm,
like one novel, which I know some
okay.
writers do that and they're really good at it. I'm just not that organized. If I go on Pinterest, I will get lost in some like,
Yeah.
workout corner of it or, some fashion
Yeah.
corner and I'll forget why I went on in the first place. So, um I haven't done that, but I think in terms of building, I like to travel a lot and I like to, experience and kind of understand a deeper, learn more about other cultures and then gain a deeper appreciation for them. So I think
Mhm.
that has been where a lot of my world building has come from. So
Nice.
um, I think, so I stayed in Greece for 2 months
Oh,
or in
wow.
Athens, and I think that has impacted. There's a couple of the cultures in my story that I know that are coming a lot from my experiences in Greece and with the language there and the culture. And so
Mhm.
I think traveling is kind of a huge. So yeah, I mean traveling and music has been a huge influence on the world building.
Mhm.
There's not, I don't have anything organized in terms of like, oh, here's my list of foods that they eat. I don't have any documents necessarily, but
Gotcha.
they're just kind
Mhm.
of, it's more like that's a culture that I visit that I know about. And I
Mhm.
don't necessarily like sometimes I'll ask myself, like, what do I think that Tarek, the chief advisor, eats for breakfast? Like, what do they actually eat? Because that's going to change what the kitchen looks like.
Hmm.
And I'll kind of poke around, and usually within the story. So I'll be writing a scene, and I do have a scene where he eats breakfast and in middle of conversation. So I do think about it. I don't. It's more of, it kind of feels a little bit more like traveling though than like going through an encyclopedia, or I don't have
Hmm.
like a document or a list or anything like that, like a formalized list. It might be fun to make one at some point, but for now, I'll just kind of poke around, and I feel like the cultures are there's two different cultures in the
Hmm.
book, so I think that they're kind of their own entities enough where I can just kind of let them be in the story, and if I need to learn something more, like if I want to know a little bit more about something, I'll write a scene with a character in
Hmm.
it, and I'll kind of be exploring an element through the scene. But
Hmm.
I won't necessarily have like anything to go back to, like a list or anything like that.
Gotcha.
So
Very
yeah.
cool. As we're starting to wrap up, I'm curious to ask. Hold on, see if I can remember what my question. Oh, very quickly, do you anticipate a sequel? Is that something you're thinking about? Maybe it's going to happen.
Okay, so this is
Do you know
fun.
yet? Okay.
The answer is I'm not sure, but I
Okay.
know that there are at least, I think, six other novels that happen in this world in different parts of the world.
Oh
And I
wow.
know that at some point, all of those novels are going to wrap up. They're going to start overlapping.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a Marvel setup where
Nice.
every culture, every corner of this world has a very specific story that I want to tell from their culture. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the Sands of Nall. It's in the desert. There's a Narn of the steppe happens in the steppe country and kind of in the flats above the mountains. And anyways, there's different cultures, and so every I don't know if these characters are going to get their own sequel or if they're going to be end up kind of being in the the novel down the road that ends up wrapping up all of these cultures. So
Mm-hmm.
the answer is I'm not sure, but I'm
Okay.
very, very excited to kind of explore more corners of this world. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time to ask all the other questions that I did want to ask about the process on traditional publishing and the fact that you've gone that route. And I think you mentioned earlier having some agents. So maybe we'll have you back, or I don't know, invite you
Yeah,
to share a short post, perhaps on the blog, about just your experience about working with or considering that. Um,
I
well,
love
like I said,
that.
we have to wrap. So, friends, if you enjoyed this, hearing from Jacqueline, please hit that like button. If you're watching on YouTube, it does help more people to hear about her writing, her courses, her upcoming book. Um, this interview, it's a preview of the kind of conversations, the community that we are building in Catholic Author. It's a super friendly, creative community for the modern Catholic author. It's a place for you to give and get feedback, share your insights and your works in progress, and build a network of supportive friends. Plus, there's a whole lot more. So come check us out. Come and join us at CatholicAuthor.us. In our last minute together, Jacqueline, if you had 1 minute to share a message of encouragement to Catholic authors everywhere, what would you like to say to them?
Um, oh yeah, let's see. So I'll try to keep it quick. I would say, um, don't be a wannabe writer, just be a writer. I guess that was one thing that I was told. You get to decide whether you're a writer or not. I think people put too much pressure sometimes on themselves to for what it takes to be a writer. They have to get things published. They have to get things published a certain way. And I would just say, if you have a story, um, that's a beautiful gift. And so just start sharing that story with the world. Don't wait, just start right away. So yeah, share it with the rest of us. We'd love that.